Stealth games are usually focused on a third-person point of view, just like the same with Assassin's Creed, Tenchu Wrath of Heaven, Hitman 2 Stealth Assassin, and Splinter Cell. Shadow Tactics Blades of the Shogun on the other hand plays out differently. With a mixture of a real-time tactics and stealth elements, the game creates a unique sense of play that's both challenging to beat and enjoyable to play throughout. Especially how clever the level design can be in every stage, offering different possibilities to accomplish a level while having an engaging story throughout the game, experiencing a sense of intrigue and urgency to the story. This is K1PM. This time I'll be doing a full review of Shadow Tactics Blades of the Shogun. I'll be going more in depth about the game and pointing out the pros and the cons of it.
I noticed your involvement just now. Tell me your name so I can thank you properly.
Mind if you let me inside first? I like being thanked in person.
Very well.
The game was developed by Mimimi Games on December 6, 2016 for the PC and later on the console after a year. Mimimi Games is a German video game developer that started out creating a few games in the past that weren't exactly that popular nor well received. This game on the other hand was a resounding success, having an overwhelmingly positive feedback that led them in developing a DLC standalone game. But for now, I would be focusing on the main game itself, not including the standalone game. The starting plot of the story revolves around the shogun's struggle against a growing rebellion during the Edo period of Japan, hunting for the mysterious figure, Kage-sama, along with his growing supporters. Having a reliable samurai retainer on board, Oshiro Mugen along with his 4 new companions initiates a plan against Kage-sama's army, committing a bunch of subterfuge tasks of assassinating important people, rescuing an ally on top of a mountain, stealing important documents, and a bunch of different tasks depending on the story. Overall though, it's quite alright in my opinion. They went a bit bold on how they portray the whole thing, showing some explicit scenes like this of how their honor is lost, or how the characters themselves have an interesting development along the way. But what strikes me the most is how engaging and interesting the dialogues in between stages are, where depending on the actions that a player engages, it triggers a unique conversation between the team. At times, they even have a comedic relief that lessens out the frustration a bit on sneaking in enemy territory, or how natural each of the conversation is. And honestly, it's a brilliant idea in what they did here, developing a bunch of likable characters overall. As a stealth game with the element of a real-time tactics, the game surprisingly plays out well. The first time I've heard about it, it sounded weird to me that I end up not paying attention to it at first, since I'm kinda used to playing stealth games in a third or first person perspective, but this game is quite the experience I had, and I didn't expect to enjoy it that much. To the point, instead of doing the objectives alone, I ended up exploring most of the things that I could do on a stage, exploring hidden Easter eggs and assassinating most of the people when they get in my way, even the enemy civilians. I could just easily knock them out, but they'll just wake up later on. If only they could just look the other way, I'd just leave them be, just like some of the civilians in other stages. The game has a total of 13 available stages, where each of the stage offers different objectives that can be completed in different type of ways, offering a variety of options available to do. The level design itself is pretty well made. I love how there's a lot of spaces I could go around, or how great the designs on each stage. It encapsulates the feel of Japan's Edo period, having a lot of different places to hide and offers a variety of pathways to go through in a mission, creating a sense of experimentation kind of play, along with the achievements that comes with it. Despite how tight the security for each stage is, there are a lot of clever ways to deal the enemy that involves the environment around and a bit of cheesing in my case. Although the controls can be a bit confusing for the PC, I can't exactly save a group of selected units as it's fixated depending on the characters, like how Mugen would always be positioned in number 3 or how Hayato is always at number 1. It can be a bit of a problem for some players, especially when characters are only allowed on specific stages. It kinda creates a gap in between on selecting a character. Aside from that, there's a feature that I really like, where setting a character's action can be in place to execute all of it at the same time. It's a good idea what they have here. But when it comes to the enemies themselves, however, they could have at least make a variety sets of enemies available at least, and not only the 3 types of common enemies available throughout the whole game. It's always the cycle of guards, straw hat guards, and samurais. Guards are the basic types that can easily be lured away from its position. Straw hats are the ones that stays within their area no matter what. It's harder for them to get distracted unless it's Aiko who can easily distract them. And then there's the samurais, who are much like the straw hats, but they can at least patrol an area while are harder to eliminate. I understand that they went for a much simpler design, a game that's easy to understand and enjoyable at the same time. But at the very least, adding a few 3 or more types of enemies would have been more challenging, instead of adding more of the same type of enemies on each stage. That just feels a bit lacking in a way. As much as I love how traversable every stage can be, there were a few problems that comes with it. There were some parts of the game that doesn't allow to go across certain specific points, even though it doesn't make sense how I can't cross within these parts. Or how there's a problem with the selection of interactable objects and jumpable platforms. It might sound nitpicking at this point, but it ends up getting frustrating when this happens from time to time. You'll understand when you get the chance of playing it.
A trap. Interesting.
Don't move. What are you? A lonely wolf?
A child, huh? You're the one they're looking for.
No, they're not. I'm silent, like a cat.
The game has 5 different playable characters. Each of the characters has their own roles and specialty that differentiates from one another in terms of skills they pull off and the kind of mobility and noise they do. Mugen acts as the strongman of the team, can slash multiple opponents in a small area, and is the only one capable of beating a samurai alone. But he can't climb on vines or some of those hooks in a roof. He's more of a heavy kind after all, although he has a bottle of sake to lure out the enemy out easily. Hayato is the main shinobi or ninja of the team, quite flexible on his execution of skills, being able to handle 2 people at the same time even at a distance with his shuriken, while being able to distract the enemy just enough to sneak through enemy lines. Aiko is the kunoichi or female ninja, can utilize her sneezing powder to lessen the vision of the enemy without them ever knowing, while being able to switch to her disguise that can easily distract the guards except for the samurai. They can see through her disguise through prolonged exposure. The problem on her side is that the disguise is only available once she manages to steal specific clothes in a single stage. Without her disguise, she's not the best one to utilize. Now Yuki is quite different. As a former skilled thief in the city of Kanazawa, she has a few unconventional tricks on her hand, setting up a trap for the enemy, then luring the enemy out with her flute. With the right position of her trap, she can easily finish off the enemy while hiding the body without a problem. Now the last one is my favorite, the Master Marksman from the 3rd Division, Takuma. This old man is a specialist of the group. Not only does he has a limited silent long-range matchlock gun and a very strong bomb at his side, the strongest thing he has is his pet Tanuki, Kuma. This little furry friend can easily distract the enemy at a distance, luring the enemy away from their position and distracting them for a short amount of time. Imagine bringing the whole set of normal guards around in the stage, then blowing them up with a bomb. This is why they are too strong for their own good. Despite having a limited ammunition for his arsenal, he's actually a bit too OP. It's a bit unbalanced knowing Takuma's pet Kuma can easily distract the enemy much better compared to the rest of the team. Except perhaps for Aiko on the other hand, since she's the only one capable of distracting these Straw Hat guards, which is actually really useful. Still, they could have at least made their skills much more distinct. I didn't manage to use Mugen's sake lure that much, or even Yuki's whistle when Takumi's on the stage. There's also the problem where every character has a gun of their own. The same thing with the distraction skills. It kinda lessens out Takuma's specialty of having a gun of his own. Despite being a bit powerful of its long range and silence capabilities, it kinda ruins his specialty of it. Now when it comes to the soundtrack of the game, however, it's actually good. It matches the theme of each stage quite well, that focuses more on the kind of Japanese aesthetic, silently behind their shadows, then striking them at their weakness. It builds up that atmosphere greatly along with the music. But in my opinion, the soundtrack lacks a bit of distinction. The kind of music when you hear it and appreciate it, but can't exactly remember how it goes that well. You know, like those background music within movies. Don't get me wrong though, I like listening to the soundtrack of it as I play the game, and I give it a plus on how fitting the music can be. It's just, it kinda seems to be missing that kind of distinction on what I'm looking for. Like how the soundtracks in Way of the Samurai and Tenchu Wrath of Heaven handles it. Try listening to the game's soundtrack of it and you'll understand it. As the game is already years old from its initial release, I'd expect a sense of polishing in the game, patching up the bugs and the problems in the game. But there were a few problems in between aside from the interactable stuff I mentioned earlier. What I find troubling is how the game freezes in specific parts of the game, despite I have a decent PC build more than the recommended setup. I kinda feel like there's a problem with the code or technical side on this matter. Luckily, there's a quick save feature to at least cover that problem up. I'm not sure with the console version of the game, however, but for the PC, it has its problem. Although there's the problem where Kuma ends up getting stuck in front of a gate, or even while climbing up a ladder. I'm not exactly sure why this happens, but the problem is there. There's also the problem with the guard's vision at times, where they couldn't actually see me even though I'm right there beside them. The game isn't exactly free from bugs, but the game is still good though. That quick save and quick load feature fixes out the problem in a different kind of way. That's why I give this game a rating of 8.2 out of 10. The game has an interesting set of ideas that establishes a challenging stealth game in a real-time tactics setting, providing a variety set of means of accomplishing a mission while having a wide enough space to go around with. Although the game has a few problems in between. With the lacking type of enemies available, it can be a bit repetitive in some areas, as the game primarily focuses on the position and numbers of enemies as a means of challenge. Although the story itself is really good. I love how realistic and likable the characters can be, having their own backgrounds and personalities that complements the game along the way, making each of the missions on a stage has an interesting play throughout. For a game that was released in 2016, it's quite impressive to be honest, how the developers made this game. Mimimi have really outdone themselves with this game, despite their previous ones are a bit sketchy. I think this game and Desperados 3 are the best ones they made so far. Hopefully, they live up with their reputation along the way. If you're looking for a unique experience on a stealth game, I highly recommend you to give this one a shot. If you're still skeptical about the game, you could try watching on my full blind playthrough of the game over here, just to check things out. For more videos such as these, why not head down to my channel to check things out? I do accurate game reviews of the past games, and some other new ones too. If you consider subscribing to my channel, please do follow me on my Twitter account for more updates. In case something bad might happen all of a sudden, there's still a way to contact me over there. This is K1PM, and I bid you farewell.